Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I like to discuss how, although the energy cap is going down, energy bills are going up this autumn, higher than they were last year. Proof, if any be needed, that the Tory government do not act to protect people, but only when they are forced to politically. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So as I see it, there are a few mysteries surrounding energy prices in Britain. First, why did our energy prices double because of Putin's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, when the government insisted that because we only imported like 3% of gas from Russia, we were protected from his nonsense? Second, why did our energy prices double when countries more reliant on Russian gas and oil did not see those high price rises? Third, why did our energy prices go up by much at all when Labour and the Lib Dems had simple enough plans to keep them roughly the same? Fourth, why are our energy prices still high when the wholesale cost of gas has been lower than it's been for years for most of this year now? And fifth, why is the cost of energy actually going up this autumn for millions of people? The reason is that energy prices last autumn were a combination of the Ofgem price cap, which is coming down, for domestic users that is, along with some additional support from the government. The government claim this was help with the cost of living, for which we should be grateful, by the way. In reality, it was using our taxes to pay for excessive corporate profits. I remind people that both gas and energy companies are posting profit margins way higher than before the invasion of Ukraine. It is legalised war profiteering, and we're paying for it. But that additional support is not going to be in place this autumn. Remember that the Conservatives resisted providing any of it at all last year for months, only caving at the last moment when it became obvious just what a hammering their reputation would take amongst key voters. Then they let Truss smash a hole in their pension pots and suffered that reputational loss anyway. But why isn't that same support in place this year? After all, the cost of living is actually worse. People now have higher rent and mortgage payments to worry about on top of the extra cost of living. Energy prices are still not reflecting the much lower price of gas. The reason is because the Tories think they can get away with it this time. In terms of voter attitudes, that's all that matters to them. They may be wrong, of course, but that doesn't matter. The Tories only approved the COVID furlough scheme in 2020 because they felt they couldn't afford not to, politically. There was no support for about 3 million self-employed people, though, not because they didn't need that support, but because the Tories thought they could afford to abandon them. The same thinking is clearly in evidence here. Last year, polling showed the Tories suffering while they resisted offering energy support, so they offered it out of political necessity. Now they think the frog has adjusted to the higher temperature water, so they can withdraw the support. The Resolution Foundation, a think tank, has published an interesting report. It indicates that people using less than the average amount of energy are actually going to see higher bills this year than last, on top of the higher cost of essentials and higher mortgage and rent costs. It's absolutely mad. Not that the Tories are leaving people in energy poverty, that's what they do when they can get away with it, but because Sunak is obsessed with inflation. And I've said this before, lowering energy costs would be the quickest and easiest way to bring inflation down. It wouldn't cost the Treasury a penny. As the report indicates, and this is what I've been saying as well, so it's interesting that there's something to back it up. You know, my thinking had been the government are not going to help with energy bills this winter, even though the cost of living crisis is worse, because the news isn't making it sound worse. And that's what the Resolution Foundation is saying. Last year, it was constantly in the headlines. It was constantly in the news about the out of control energy costs and what the price cap was going to go up to, and people can't afford it. There's nothing like that this year. It's not happening. And it's almost like I'm sort of wondering if there's a sense that when people are suffering, and they see in the news that lots of others are as well, they know it's a crisis that the government should deal with, so they hassle their MP about it. But when they're suffering and they don't see it in the news, they sort of think, well, maybe it's just me, and they don't bother to hassle their MP. If you're struggling, write to your MP. They might write back saying, I don't care. Just do it. You know, I think that's what the problem is. There's none of that connection. People maybe don't realise that it's a problem actually worse than last year. Never mind, just as bad. Last year, out of control energy prices, they were all over the news. Focused people's attention on the crisis. Those people demanded their MPs acted, so those MPs acted. This year, hardly anything in the news about it, so people aren't bugging their MPs about it, whether it's for the reasons I suppose or something else, even though it's a bigger problem now than it was then. Oh, did I mention that politics is crazy sometimes? This is quite normal. People panic not when the situation is worse. For whatever reason, it's when the news says that it's worse. So because people only bug their MPs when the news is banging on about something, as opposed to when they are independently concerned, the government thinks it can get away with screwing people over this autumn and not suffer any comeback, even when gas and energy companies next year post historically high profits again. That will happen and people will just shrug it off. Oh, well, what were we to do? What were you to do was to bug your MP to stop letting them make extra. This is extra profits beyond what their business model planned for from you. So we're going to pay higher energy bills when the cost of producing energy is lower and the cost of living crisis is more acute, because that is how a functional society works, apparently. And when asked about this, the Times reported that Cabinet Minister Grant Shapps said, well, the government doesn't want to be constantly paying energy bills. He said money doesn't come from nowhere. Well, technically it does, but in practical terms, no, it comes from taxation. Tax the windfall profits, use the money to keep the energy bills down. That is what the opposition were hammering Sunak to do over a year and a half ago now. Also, remind energy companies that the cost of gas is now lower than when their prices were about half the current rate. Their actual prices should reflect that fact. Yes, it may have had to go up a little bit to pay for their workers' pay rises, not really much else. Certainly not the cost of gas. Actually, don't bother telling the energy companies that. Tell Ofgem to tell the energy companies. That's their job. But no, the Tories have seen an opportunity to swindle the public again, so that's what they're going to do. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships, and until next time, I'll see you later.